charging some extra juice on Toronto, but not giving it to the dog.
Yeah.
Right. So just increasing their line because that's kind of the dirty tricks that they use out here. But
that's the Titan plays strategy. Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Lines, the only podcast purifying the sports betting industry. Remember to like, download, subscribe, follow us on all the socials at InPlay Live. I'm your host, Shane Mercer. That guy over there, Andrew Pace, founder of InPlay Live, a community of like-minded sports bettors dedicated to long-term success. And today, we're sharing the airwaves with another podcast host, Alex Piskopos, better known as Pisky, host of Always Betting, a budding entrepreneur, and a loyalist college alumni, just like yours truly over here. Pisky, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, boys. Oh, we didn't talk about that before we went live. I didn't know you went to Loyalist as well. That's awesome.
Yeah. Spent 2 years at Loyalist College in Belleville, Ontario.
Bell Vegas.
And actually met my wife in Bell Vegas. Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah. Right on.
So real connection to that area. And when I heard you went there, I was like, I gotta sort of throw this in off the top and give them a bit of a surprise. But as we go through the show, I think you're going to find that's not the only thing we have in common.
Interesting. Okay. Nice. Yeah, no, I loved my time at Loyalist. It got me out of Quebec, stopped dealing with all the French over here. I'm actually in Quebec right now visiting my parents. But yeah, a couple of years at Loyalist, and through that, I was able to spend some time in Switzerland. One of the professors there ran a school in Switzerland, so that was pretty badass as well. And that was my stepping stone into to start working in the sports betting industry in Ontario.
Hey, there you go. First things that I always like to ask somebody when they come on the show is, what are you betting on? But given that we're just coming off of the first week of the NFL, I'm sure that's probably what you're betting on these days.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Some of the groups that I work with are madly obsessed with Challenger tennis right now. So I've been doing a lot of that stuff. Okay. And other things is I've been working closely with a very, very solid prop guy this season. So a lot of NFL props, but also Major League Baseball props. And he's been doing exceptionally well and has been a great, very easy person to work with, which is a great thing to have in this industry. There's a lot of smart people, but I've seen that some of them aren't the best to work with. So when you find the good ones that are very smart and good to work with, well, then it's a double whammy and it's very refreshing.
Yeah, no, that's a tough thing to find in this industry. I think, it can be difficult. So you definitely want to hold on to those people when you find them.
Absolutely,
for sure. Yeah, 100%. Pace over at InPlay Live. We had a pretty solid weekend. Very football focused, college football, then of course the NFL. But you also had a little bit of a thing going on with Bet99 this weekend.
Yeah, it's just one of these funny things, right? Like we always love to bring up like how a sports book has treated us. I'm just going to share my screen so that if you're watching this one on YouTube, you can actually see what I'm referencing here. So Bet99, I noticed, and if anyone's been using them recently, they probably noticed this as well. So they're doing this reality check thing. And when it first popped up, I actually thought to myself, that's probably a good idea. Just because, Shane, obviously we've touched on like responsible gambling tools and how they benefit the sports book most of the time. Yeah. And the benefit is actually rarely with the player. And in some cases, I think some of the responsible gambling tools, not only is the benefit not with the player, I don't even know if there's a reason as to how it could benefit the player in some of the circumstances. So a reality check that lets you know your session total is kind of like, okay. Maybe that is a good piece of information to have. Well, as many people that follow my betting journey know, $4,744 of loss as a reality check is well within my means. But what I noticed with the Bet99 reality checks was they kept popping up. Now, in this particular account, I deposited $2,000. Pretty quickly, I'm going to have that money down and on the games. If it isn't going to be in one bet, it'll usually be in 2 to 4. So in this particular case, I had won $2,000 and ridden that up to $4,744. And this might look like irresponsible betting, but again, that 47.44 is well within my unit sizing. So I'm going to get that money down as quickly as I possibly can again. And with Bet99, what they were doing is they're sending you reality checks, but they're not sending them when you're up. And not only that, they're sending them when the money is pending. And I was wondering if that was to try to evoke some sort of tilt or some sort of, like, oh my God, I've lost my bets when they're actually in fact open. So I just thought it was funny that they were putting out these reality checks that I thought were beneficial, because I genuinely was like, hey, maybe that's not a bad thing. But yeah, 4744 I had pending, and just a few minutes later, you can see the other screenshot on the side. I was not down $4,744.
Not even close.
Those were pending wagers that, again, all happened to win. And you see the balance here shortly thereafter. So my session total was not that amount. What the reality check should say there is, $0 with 4744 pending. Or not post the reality check based on pending wagers, post it after they've settled. So yeah, I thought that was kind of just one that we could bring up on the show just to almost even see what people think.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's a reality check, except it's an alternate reality. A reality they want you to live in. Pisky, what do you think?
I completely caught me off guard there, because I'm like, okay, this seems like pretty responsible stuff, but if they're not showing the winning side because they want you in there continuously rolling it over and stuff, and the fact that it's in red and it's pending, that just doesn't make sense to me at all. So what are they trying to invoke there? A deposit? Saying, I guess not, because it is a reality check, but these things do not pop up if you're in the green. Is that what you're saying?
They could. I played 26 hours live betting this last weekend. 26 hours. I only saw red. Right? They stopped popping up.
That is very interesting.
A lot of zeros popped up, though. A lot of zeros popped up. So if I hadn't made a wager in an hour, it would say your session is at 0, which even that was weird, because I'm like, well, yeah, I haven't bet in the last hour, but what about when I was like, where's you're up 4,000, you're up 8,000. Like, yeah, they didn't, very strange.
Well, I totally get it, though, because these places, throughout all my content, I like to call them predatory places, because a lot of people have softened that edge and call them recreational sports bets. But no, I like to change the narrative, and they are predatory sportsbooks, because these are the sportsbooks that they'll welcome anybody with open arms. But as soon as you start to show that you know what you're doing, they show you the door, and they go after problem gamblers. I've worked on the inside of these places, right? They're going to dress it up, and they're going to put on the face of responsible gambling and stuff like that. But deep down inside, it's a business for them, right? And the people that are losing a ton make them a ton. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that they do have little manipulative tactics to mix in with these responsible gambling tools of theirs.
Huh, that's fascinating that you call it predatory. I mean, I think, Pace and I probably sort of view it in that way too, but what's interesting to me is that you're calling it predatory, because we're going to dive into that a little bit more, because you have worked at these places. So for all the audience out there, stay tuned. We're going to really dig into this topic in just a few moments. But before we do, another kind of reality check on one of these predatory books, as Pisky referred to it as. Bet365 got a bit of a reality check in the past week here, and it came from the New Jersey regulator. And this is a bit of a funny one, because it's not a lot of money. So the regulator in New Jersey fined Bet365 $33,000, and that's because they were taking bets on events in which the outcome was already known. So this isn't the story of like, bettors hitting them up a pass post kind of thing, but it's the fact that they offered the markets at all when the event was already known. And in one case, it took bets on an MMA event a week after it was already held. Which is just like unbelievable to think that it was a full week later that they're still taking bets on this event. And I guess it was being played over tape, and they were kind of treating it like it was an actual event.
So, but hold on, like, could people not have won money as a result of that?
Yeah. People could have. It's not clear whether what they did with the bets, if they voided them all after the fact. I imagine they did, but just because they were offered at all, the regulator fined them for that.
Wow, but
Interesting.
33K though. That is like for Bet365. Are you
Right?
kidding me?
It's pretty small. But hold on, though. In fairness, this does come after they were fined in July for changing odds on players after the bets were already made. So unilaterally changing the odds, which anybody who's got the soft books on a regular basis has dealt with this at some point. But the same regulator, New Jersey's Gaming Enforcement Division, fined Bet365 for that in July to the tune of over $500,000, which is arguably, it's much bigger than the 33, but still very within Bet365's means.
Yeah, but that's also New Jersey. Like that, whatever they did in New Jersey, we know this obviously firsthand. They did it in every state and province and across the UK and everywhere that they operate. They only got fined in New Jersey. I would love to see the other states look into what they got fined for and roll it out across all of them and say, hey, you did that here too. You can't do that, because that is what Bet365 is like. They are the scum of the scum of the scum of the scum. And I've had a recent reminder of it, and it's they are absolutely brutal when it comes to all this kind of stuff and what they try to pull over their players. So I'm glad they've gotten fined. I'd love to see it. Across multiple states.
I would like just the regulators to have a little bit of knowledge of the space. How about that? Is that too much to ask? Because, I scream about this online all the time, and people tell me to calm down and stop whining. And you know how the industry is these days, and pretty much has always been. But what really infuriates me is, the lack of knowledge of the regulators. Like, they need people with actual sports betting experience. And it would be nice if they could get people that actually know what they're doing and have been profitable in the space and have been through these terrible things that we always go through of getting kicked out, getting limited, getting shown the door, kicked out after 3 bets. I just had something that happened to me. Are we allowed to shit on other sportsbooks?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go for it. That's what we do here.
So there was a new sportsbook that showed up. It's called Titan Play. They showed up newly in Ontario. Every now and then I go over to iGaming Ontario's website and I tell them to give me the list of sports books that are allowed to operate in Ontario. So Titan Play popped out of nowhere, and I'm like, okay, let me take a look. And I went and took a look. I liked what I saw, so I sent them a little deposit. Super soft, by the way. If anyone wants a real easy book to go and kick the shit out of.
Do you know who the odds provider is?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not. But you know what? If you go on to iGaming Ontario, they have that listed there.
Right.
So I went on there and did a number on them. But we were on a hot streak. You guys know how it is, right? Up and down, up and down, up and down. At the end of the year, you want a certain hold percentage. But we have been on fire the last 3-4 weeks. So that happens. And then obviously when that happens, you start losing accounts. But this place did something that I haven't seen in quite a while. They doubled my juice on everything. So I logged in on Sunday to play some bets for the NFL, and I was staring at minus 128 a side on sides and totals in the NFL pregame. Can you fucking believe that?
And you think they just did this to you?
Yes. Well, no, that's one of their systems that they flick a switch. So
bingo.
If you have a lot of the PPH bookie sites, right? They design your account based on the player, right? Mm-hmm. So for some people, those accounts can be, as good as Pinnacle from a juice standpoint, if not even better potentially, depending on how bad that player is, all the way to what Pisky's describing there, right? And those same lines are oftentimes offered at some of the offshore sports books. So, if you go into some of the most reputable sports books that exist, I'm not saying they do this. I'm saying they can, where they put you in a class that does give you higher juice, longer spinners, all that kind of stuff. Now, Titan Play, just because I assume as many of our listeners hear that come out of your mouth are going to do exactly what I just did, and that was instantly go to the site. So I'm on their site right now. This is the same odds provider, and this is going to really hit home for a lot of our members, as FansBet. Okay. And I have never, Pisky, never in my life have I had an experience at a sports book like what happened to me at FansBet. So did my standard sort of $2,000 deposit. I'm sitting up at about 10 or 11,000 in the account, and they're taking like a decent hold on the wagers that I'm placing. So in this particular example, there's about 6 minutes left in a hockey game, and I placed a wager on the outcome of the remainder of that hockey game. 6 minutes on the timer. So real time, that could be 6 minutes at the least, but there's going to be a whistle, a timeout, penalty, whatever. Probably closer to 15 or 20 minutes. They spun my wager for the entirety of the remainder of the game, waited to see whether or not it won or lost, and then either voided the bet or accepted it. I videoed $1 on both sides for the next hockey game. They did the same thing. Voided the winning side. I took both sides just to see what they do. Right. Voided the winning side and accepted and put in the losing side. So Shane, we actually had a discussion. Yeah. I think it was last week 1 of the NFL. It was probably to the day,
like a year ago to the day,
12 months ago.
Yeah,
and it was about that odds provider, and so they did that to me as I did basically 2 bets around the exact same time, which wiped my balance. They marked them as those wagers. They spooled them for the whole time, then marked them as losers at the very end. Well, I had like $600 left in this account, and I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna build a crazy ass parlay, and my goal will be to hedge out on another book, or if it hits, just start moving, since they're letting me bet pregame and move my money out through Pinnacle. By hedging out. And obviously I'm going to take a real hit if I do that on the juice. So what I did it's again, the same odds provider. So what I did was I selected a whole bunch of wagers, just the whole betting menu for NFL Sunday. And Shane, we were filming this with Monday Night Football pending. The wager was pending. I had 1 leg left and it paid out like 90,000 or something like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
We talked about what my options would be if it won. But this is the important part of why I'm bringing this up. All the odds that I selected, they're all pregame. When I clicked it, all the juice that actually went through on the bet slip, we shared it on this show. Yeah. All the juice that went through they all went from like -110s to -140s. They all changed once it accepted. And I would have just loved nothing more than to hit that last leg. But of course, as every bettor who takes ridiculous long shot parlays can tell you, the last leg, of course, lost.
Yeah. That's brutal. That's brutal, man. I was kind of stunned when this was happening, and I will add to my experience as well. There was a point where they started screwing around with, because you can tell, right? At the beginning, everything's going in nice and smooth. And then you get to a point where, it would spin. And let's say I played a -21. All of a sudden, it would spin. And then in the bet slip, it would change to a -23. Just no explanation. No change of juice, no nothing. It's just like, okay, take it for 2 points worse than you wanted it, and it's like, okay, no, cancel, obviously. And then the NFL Sunday, a different line code. They put me in a store, I guess, that they put maybe sharp bettors or guys who get really lucky, like I did, and and that's it. Now I have not requested a payout yet. We'll see what that experience is like, but man, oh man, like. That's where I think regulators need to step in, and there has to be a level playing field here, because it's just books can do whatever the hell they want.
So when you get a wager accepted, there it says running, right? Is that
I believe so? Yes.
Yeah. That's the odds provider. Okay.
Yeah.
So they are the ultimate scum of scum in the industry. There's no one worse than them. But the good news is for you, they've entered a regulated environment, so they can't you have something to fall back on.
Right.
Whereas in the stories that I've had, you really don't have anything to fall back on with these guys. So whenever I'm looking up lines, and they are so soft, guys, so go get them. They are so soft. Yeah. Go get them, but expect this is the thing with some of these practices with books this bad. It's net worth the problems that you deal with because of how beatable they are.
Mm-hmm.
So this bullshit all occurs and you still end up going, well, okay, I'm still going to take the bet.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of know what you're signing up for, and you're like, okay, I'm going to have to deal with a little bit of bullshit, but it might be worth it because, like you said, they are that bad. It's pretty pathetic.
And you regulator aside, you are going to have a real headache getting the money out of there, but you have something to fall back on. So I'm sure you'll be able to get paid. But I am shocked they entered into Ontario. That odds provider entered into Ontario. Right. Wild stuff. They are the worst of the worst. There's nothing I've seen worse in the industry than them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Ontario, there for the most part, it's really cheap to get into as an operator. Like, don't quote me on this, but I think it's somewhere in the vicinity of $250,000 per operator to get in. Whereas if you're looking at states like New York and stuff, I think it's like in the millions, right? So I think that's why they have so many people coming in, because it is cheap to operate there. But for people that know what they're doing, Ontario is a great place to live right now, because I think we're up to 30 different operators that you can hop around to, do the merry-go-round, and then move on to
we are very lucky being in Ontario for that reason.
I love it. 2022, I actually spent the football season in Vegas. We were trying to get the podcast off the ground. We're trying to give some spice and fire to the content that was putting out. And I think as a Canadian, I only had about 6 outs in Vegas, whereas you come back home to Ontario and now I'm up to 30. So yeah, massive difference, and obviously the best place to play if you're doing this thing of going place to place.
Yeah. So Shane, Titan Play launched in June of 2024, the end of June in Ontario. So it is super new. I'm surprised we actually haven't come across it yet. And they're powered by a company called sorry, I lost it. Powered by Della Sport. And that would be, and they have another, that same odds provider has another book in Ontario called, so if you want to hit them twice, they called something green, I think. I'm just looking it up now. But anyways, there's another book with Dallas, Green Brick Labs. Maybe that's just a casino, but if it's a sports book, they're in Ontario as well. So it's actually good news from the standpoint of someone that soft being in a regulated environment that you can go hit if you're in that area.
Yeah. I'm actually getting a little bit excited over here, kind of licking my chops at that. Some fresh meat. Thanks for bringing that to our attention here, Pisky.
No problem. Go after them, boys. But let it be known that they have a weird way of telling you to scram.
Well, they all do it in their own way, I suppose.
They do. And again, back to my experience, I know places do have different stores for different types of players. I remember like way back in the day when I first started in the industry, they would have player profiles between guys who always played favorites and guys who always played underdogs. So you'd probably lose or gain a half a point depending on what store you're in. And then, every now and then you'd have these guys call in and you'd say, I don't understand. The Broncos are -6.5 in my account, and in my buddy's account, they're -7.5. Like, what the hell is going on here? But yeah, that's a long time ago. So let's head back into the past a little bit though, Pisky, because we're talking about Ontario, we're talking about the regulated market, and you are probably somebody who has deep, extensive knowledge of Ontario's regulated market and the way it changed over. How many years did you spend working at OLG? OLG, I started in 2008 and I left in 2021. So, and it was the exact day I started is the day I left. So I worked 13 years to the actual day, which wasn't really planned, but it's just kind of weird how that worked out. But yeah, 13 years grinding inside, the corporate environment that, as a young punk, I thought climbing the corporate ladder was the way to go. And I mean, like halfway through my tenure there, I realized that is not who I am. And I kind of used it as guaranteed income because I started to get more serious in sports betting. And in 2021, it was time to leave because they were making some mistakes at the Lottery Corporation that I told them about. I was a very good employee at one point and told them some of the issues they were having, and they made a choice not to listen to me. So I partnered up with, again, some very intelligent people, and we decided to do something about it. And I'm very confident that will be a book or a movie one day, because how we did it and what we did and how we did it was pretty special and pretty entertaining.
Okay, so I know a little bit about.
Hold on, Shane. Are we not going to go into the book or the movie? Like,
no, absolutely. No. I'm about to sort of mention. I know some of what Pisky's story is here.
Yeah. Of course.
And it is absolutely fascinating, and it's really incredible. And Pace, we've sort of talked a lot about lately on the show, and Pisky, this is sort of something that our audience will know, is that over the last few weeks, Pace went to Bet Bash. We've been connecting with a lot of like old school sports bettors, guys like Spanky, Fats, Adam Bjorn, some of these guys who have been around a long, long time and have sort of, approached sports betting in the very sort of Billy Walters approach of gather some originators, create a team of movers, runners, and disperse, and get your money down, know you have an edge, all that sort of stuff. And that, was sort of the approach through, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. And now here we are in this sort of, 2010s, things start to change. And then certainly in the last 5 years, it's been a whole shift, where the game maybe isn't played that way anymore. But you did play the game that way right at the tail end. And, it's really sort of fascinating how you did it and what you did. But, for everybody out there listening, I guess give them that sort of, breakdown of exactly how you attacked OLG on player props.
Yeah, so it's a fascinating story because they had a very archaic system in place at the OLG that I had to work with, right? So a lot of people like to poke fun at how shit the odds were at Proline and, how many mistakes we made. But if anyone were to see the tools we were using at this place, I always like to compare it to using plastic utensils at a steakhouse. Because the tools we had were built in the late 80s, and they had little Band-Aids all over them, so that the product itself was essentially Swiss cheese. There were a lot of different ways to beat it. And I've met a lot of different people that were doing very similar things and just, living, making a tremendous return off a lot of the Proline products. But what made it really interesting was the fact that they had a little bit of a defense mechanism in place that was, you could only bet $100 per store per ticket. So you could buy lottery tickets at gas stations, convenience stores, grocery stores, Shoppers Drug Mart, places like that. And they put this defense mechanism in because they didn't have the ability to move their odds. So once they put their odds out, that was it. They had no ability to change them. The only way they could zap an event would be to take it off the board completely. Yeah. So we needed bodies,
which they did quite often.
Yeah, which they did. Yes. Again, it was like, speaking from the guy who was on the inside, it was our only line of defense. So if you see this random game getting blown up and you realize that your odds are way off and that's why they're blowing it up, you only have one choice, and that is to zap it. So so we needed to get down volume. We had an edge. We had a very strong edge. And we needed to get down as much volume as humanly possible. But seeing as though you could only play this product in convenience stores, grocery stores, and gas stations, we set up a team. I think at the peak NFL Sunday, we were probably 25 total that went out as far east as Cornwall and as far west as Burlington. So if anyone's familiar with Ontario is a pretty big province. So we basically east to west completely.
We're talking about a 6 to 7 hour drive from one end to the other here. So
we had this crazy system where my buddy, my partner, the Full Dog, he was down in Costa Rica kind of orchestrating everything from there, and he'd put together all the combos and would send them up to me in Toronto. I'd be up at 5:30 in the morning filling out these selection forms. So these selection forms were like, if you go play a Lotto 649 in store, that's what you had to do. You had to fill out one of those for every combo that you played on these player props.
Yeah, it's a Scantron sheet is what it is.
Scantron sheet. There you go.
If anybody remembers that from high school, when you did those multiple choice tests, it's the same idea.
Yeah, exactly. So we had thousands. I spent the entire morning from like 5 a.m. till 7 a.m. just printing these things out, getting these envelopes. Everything's in cash, so you got to put cash in these envelopes, and then all my runners would show up to my condo in downtown Toronto. So I used to meet some of them in various other parts as well. And I would give them these envelopes, and then it was their job to go from store to store to store to store, as many as they could. And we'd pay them on how many stores they could go to. So that was kind of the incentive that we used, is that depending on the amount of volume they could get down, we would give them a percentage of that volume.
So they got paid no matter what. Win or lose, they got paid.
Win or lose, no matter what, yeah. And I'll even give it away, because I gave it away on the Circles Off podcast. It was 5%. So whatever they could bet, whatever they could get down, we would give them 5% of as pay. So yeah, so they loved it. My friends loved it, and but it was challenging, because a lot of these places would only let them play $100 a pop. So we had little tricks of the trade. There was one of my favorite ones was getting my girlfriend and some of her really good looking friends to help out, because, as a dude, you walk into some of these gas stations and the attendant, would look at you and, give you the hard stop sign and say, no, $100 max. But you send in an attractive female with a big smile and, kick up the charm a little bit. And, they would politely ask, can I play 200? Can I play 300? And the store clerk would, absolutely, you do whatever you want. Come back anytime you want. So that's one that I always like to share. But yeah, it was like the way it had to happen. It was so time sensitive, because the games kick off at 1:00. So we had to get out early. They'd only start offering these things at 5:30 a.m. and just getting everything coordinated and make sure everyone goes out and there's no mistakes. And, again, all cash transactions. So you got to use very reliable people, because, sometimes, Christ, if you didn't, very easy for cash envelopes to go missing. But our crew was just spectacular, and we never had issues with that. And yeah, we did it for the course of the football season, and it went the way we expected it to win, with the exclamation point being that amazing game in Buffalo in December. I don't know if you guys remember. It was in 2021. It was the Patriots at the Bills, and I think there was a combination of maybe 6 passes that were thrown the entire game. And
never forget it.
This system was betting unders. It was all the unders. So we just parlayed all the props under week after week, and that was when the bomb went off, because I think it was just the Patriots running back that went over. He broke a run or something.
He busted the line,
yeah,
80-yard
exactly.
Yeah, that was expensive for me.
Yeah. Every other single prop that they offered went under, and it was stunning. In the moment, I actually had nightmares that night of the RCMP coming and knocking on my door because of how bad we lit them up. But it was spectacular, and we miss it dearly. But yeah, in 2022, they ended up switching their system, changing to a more traditional style sportsbook. So our angle went away, and all these store clerks and gas stations haven't seen any of us since. And every now and then we do pass some of our go-to spots, and they just look at us with these gleaming eyes, and thinking that it's back on. But no, unfortunately, it's not. Things change, and we've had to adapt and change up and go on and move on to different things.
How much money did you make on that Bills game as a team collectively, the total amount?
You know what? A lot of people ask for specific numbers. I'll tell you, it was in the 6 figures. I won't tell the exact amount, because I like to keep it a mystery.
What were the odds you hit at?
That I couldn't even tell you. We were playing a lot of 5 and 6 teamers. Usually, I think the flat line was 1.7 aside. So on the surface, that looks like complete dirt, right? But once you get them all portioned together, it explodes in quite a sensational fashion.
Yeah, there was some 7-figure bettors that day for sure. People that saw the game that jumped on the same game parlays of all the unders live in real time.
Yeah.
It's funny, because when you were telling the story, number one, that's just fucking incredible. Like, it's incredible. It's just so cool. It sounds fun too.
Oh,
Like it sounds like it's a lot of fun.
It was a ton of fun, and the ultimate revenge factor, right? Because I was in there, and kind of at the bottom rung of the entry level thing, just a sports analyst, and I went to them with this problem. I said, "Listen, this is beatable, and this is
You're
ways
fired.
that you can ways you can fix it." And it was kind of a settle down, young grasshopper. Here's your 2-page manual. Do nothing less, nothing more.
Yeah.
And then, we started compiling data, and, I got to give a shout out where shout out is deserved. The full dog down in Costa Rica, he smelt blood and he went after it. And he built something very special. He said, this is how we're going to do it. And this is how I think we can get down. And we put it all together, and it was pure magic.
Fuck, it's so cool.
It really is the ultimate like disgruntled employee revenge story. It's just like, yeah.
Well, I don't think that you are old in any way, but when you said you're going to remember this Bills Patriots game, I thought you were going to say like in 2012 or something. Like, because I'm thinking about like British Columbia, and we had the exact same system at playnow.com.
Right.
We had to parlay everything. I don't know if you had to parlay everything.
Yep.
So all the like you had to make
3 legs
parlay.
minimum. 3 legs minimum. Yeah.
So we were 2 legs minimum, and I don't ever remember seeing a player prop option ever. So I don't think we had the same system, but it sounds very similar. And we had playnow.com replace what was called sports action. You want to bet? That's what it was. And we had Playnow. When playnow.com first came out, it was just the online version of it. So, but it was the Scantron thing, the same system, everything. So if you guys would have had that, there would have been this brief window where you could have done it online instead of in person. But that was gone for us like a solid, like, I want to say 12 years ago, but definitely 10 years ago, that was gone. So when you were telling this story, I thought you were dating back. I can't believe that was still there in 2022. That is unbelievable that it was still there, given the technology and the world we live in.
2021 was the last year they offered.
Okay.
It. Yeah.
After basically the Bills Patriots game. Is
basically.
The young grasshopper was right.
Yeah. Well, they'll never admit that. They never admit that. And I never tell the exact amount. So they think I'm probably talking about like $5,000 here and there. And, that's fine. I want it to stay that way. And, a couple of the guys that helped us with liquidity know the number, and the full dog. There's basically 4 of us on the entire planet that know what we did in there, and I like that it continues to add a little bit of mystery because. Like I said, it was special. And you mentioned something about online. See, this was the benefit that we had. I don't think we could have done this online because it would have taken a ton of beards with a ton of KYC and getting shut down, and they'd be able to see your plays. The OLG had blindfolders on. They couldn't see nothing. Everything was done anonymously at these convenience stores and stuff. They didn't know who was hitting them. They didn't know what the tools that they had were complete garbage. So they couldn't see any of this. And to be honest, it looked like just some crazy parlays, right? Just 5 and 6 teamers. It's usually nothing to get your panties in a bunch about, as a bookmaker. So the reason this succeeded was because of the anonymity factor. Because online, I don't think we could have pulled it off, to be honest.
Okay, so but in order to maintain that anonymity factor, you had to do something else, because I've won big with OLG before, and I've been put through the interrogation process, which is what it is. I was in a room for like 5-6 hours one day, and go through a layer of interviews. You would know all about it since you worked there, right? And so you would have had to keep, I think, your winnings below $10,000 to avoid that process of verification and interrogation, right? Am I right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. We strategically built these things. So the way we went out on games, the only time you'd have to go to the prize center, which is the interrogation room, essentially, is if your ticket paid over $1,000. So we strategically calculated the odds pre going out on them. And for the high ones, like 5 and 6 teamers, we did them at $25 a pop. So you'd walk into a gas station and you'd hand them the slip and you say, can you play that 4 times, please? So it would be $25 parlays instead of 100 because we wanted to keep everything under 1,000. And then we went out into the city around Toronto and just made some friends with some retailers, because the retailers, it helped them out as well. So this is another crazy factor. This is coming out of the pandemic, right? So we had some retailers that helped us out big time. And without them, this would have been completely impossible, because you needed constant cash coming in, right? So when you win, you had to go and cash at the retailers. Well, if a lot of the retailers didn't have cash because we're coming out of the pandemic and everyone thinks cash has COVID all over them, right? And so without making these friendships with these retailers that would bring us in, they would close down the store, they would cash our tickets for us. Without them, again, this would have been completely impossible, but the retailers would get 2% of everything they cashed. So they loved us. And I don't know for certain, but as soon as we stopped betting, a lot of them disappeared. So I don't know if we were keeping the lights on with a little bit of hope with what we were giving them in terms of cashing our tickets, but a lot of them went completely well, I guess they're just not there anymore.
Wow.
So it was a perfect harmony, because the Lottery Corporation makes a ton of money because there are so many squares out there. There's so many squares that have no idea what they're doing. They're going to the store, they're buying their milk, their bread, and they're playing a $5 Pro Line ticket, and they've been doing it for 35 years. They cash in big time on those people. Yeah. And then you have the sharps that eat and take a little bit of, off the table from the Lottery Corporation. And then you had the retailers that were making money off of us. So everyone was perfect. Everyone was having such a great time, and they had to go and change it. And now, yeah, it's not like that anymore.
It's really cool though. Like, what a season of magic.
Yeah, it was perfect. Everyone was eating. Everyone was happy, and they had to go and change shit. So that's kind of
okay. So at the top of the show, though, we talked a little bit about, you called them predatory sportsbooks. The OLG and Proline now has its app. It's got its, it's in the mix with the rest of them, and it's a soft book. It can be very, very soft in some markets. And they do exactly what all the soft books do. What are your thoughts on having worked there, and the fact that, hey, this is a government agency. It's an agency of the province of Ontario. And it's, in your words, preying upon its own citizens.
Where do I begin? I just think, they're all in the same boat. No one is better than the other. They're all coming at it from the exact same angle, but especially the Lottery Corporation, because they really piss me off in ways. And yes, I am very thankful to have worked there for as long as I did. And, having them as sort of a backbone was my kind of highway into the stuff that I did on the side with the sports betting and stuff. So I kind of do owe them some credit in that regard. But yeah, the fact that they can, tell people to come in and spend all their money, and they have some massive losers there. I during the pandemic, I worked a bit of time in customer service, and I had access to some of the accounts, some of the VIP accounts that are just massive losers. And I mean, the fact that they can take all that money and not blink an eye, but yet as soon as someone knows what they're doing, they give them all kinds of problems in terms of shortening their limits, and then, the KYC, and, let's screw around with them a little bit more. This is blurry. That doesn't have a logo on it. Send it in again. It's despicable. And the Lottery Corporation pisses me off even more, because they try to act all hoity-toity about it. Like they're big responsible gambling people, but yet you're responsible gambling people that deals drug. You know what I mean? You're a drug dealer that you say, consume responsibly, but you're the one dealing the drugs. So I just don't know. I don't see how they can align. And that is something that drives me crazy. And especially for them, because they act so proper, and they act like, they're doing something right. And, all our proceeds go back to the people of Ontario, and they try to dress it up like that, but they're no different than any of these other places, whether it be offshore or legalized now. They're all the same.
What's frustrating about it to me is that, they could, and I don't know that they have the technology and the infrastructure for it right now at OLG, but they could, in theory, given that they are an agency of the province and they could get the funding for it, is to adopt a sharp book model. And that's something that would, maintain some level of fair play with their own citizens.
I'm going to be as nice as possible as I can with this answer. I've seen the inside of the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. They do not have what it takes to run a sharp book model, not in the slightest. And I will back up and I will just leave it at that. They don't have the personnel for something like that.
I think, guys, from an industry standpoint, though, like, it's easy to sit here and just talk shit. But we always have to have the perspective of how we've made money in the first place, right? So if you're a successful sports bettor and I ask you the question of, would you rather OLG or any book, really, but since we're on the topic, OLG and what's it called again? Proline. OLG and Proline. Would you rather they have Pinnacle's lines where you play there forever, or would you rather have their lines where you play there for a short period of time and then maybe some friends and family of you get to play there as well, right? So there's a place in the industry where, do I want these sports books to treat winning players the way that they do? Of course not. Do I want it regulated better? Absolutely. There's no debate of that. But if you're saying the alternative is this world where everyone is Pinnacle, BetChris, the other sharp books, well, I kind of like the world that we live in to an extent. And it's like, let people keep trying to get a piece of the pie, where we do have new sports books. Like, what's this terrible one you just told us about? Titan. Let Titan Play come try to get their piece of the pie. Right. I'd love for there to be some middle ground with all of it, where it is better regulated and people are treated properly. But at the same time, like, if the alternative is everyone's Pinnacle, that's no upside.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. I do love to partake in shit talking all the predatory books out there and getting frustrated when they shut you down after 6-7 bets because you're getting a ton of CLV and things are hot off the press when you're betting them. But for someone like myself, I am a top-down bettor. I need these places because I do not have the mental capacity to beat places like Pinnacle. Maybe in weaker markets like props and stuff like that, I kind of stand a chance with some of the new guys that I'm working with. But I've been a perennial loser at Pinnacle my entire sports betting career. I am not scared or ashamed to admit that. So yes, to answer your question, I need the Pro Lines, the Titan Plays, the Bet365s, the DraftKings of the world, because I pick on them with what I know about what the numbers should be because of the sharp books out there.
I just want to say, like, yeah, Pace, I take your point there that we need these soft books, absolutely, and probably nobody needs them more than me, because I'm kind of like with Pisky there, I want to avoid the sharper books where I can, but when I talk about a government agency, something that my tax dollars go towards, it's fine, if you want to limit me, but give me a reasonable limit. Don't give me a dollar limit. I think we can all eat, I guess, is the point. Where Pisky, you made it very clear that, look, the OLG is raking it in. I think maybe they can allow some of the sharp bettors to come in and eat a little bit. They can afford that without limiting us to the point where you can't use them anymore.
I totally agree. Have you been limited completely on Proline to like $1 max?
Yes.
You have? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have an account there. Now, I don't know if this is maybe because they just don't want to see the social media storm that will ensue if they do put me at one single dollar. On soft markets, on like some of this really weird challenger tennis stuff that I've been betting, the limits are super small, like $50, $75. But on other things, my account is still good. I deposited at the Super Bowl because they had some stupid promotion going on this past Super Bowl. This past Super Bowl. Made a small little deposit. I've probably 8x'd my deposit. And I don't have the biggest limits, but it's still usable stuff, right? I can still get in 200 here, 500 here, 1,000 on some of them. And I'm kind of shocked by that because my strategy is like, I'm delicate when I go into new books. Right. If it's a fresh DraftKings, if it's a fresh FanDuel, I'll kind of, try to look as square as I can going in there. But once you put the cuffs on me and let's say you give me 10% limits and my max bet is $200. Well, now you're getting all the shit. Now I don't care. You're getting Bulgaria Division 2. It's coming. It's coming hot. And I just let them have it. And I've kind of found a way to use these small limit books to my advantage because, yeah, sure, one book, let's say one account will give you $200. If I have 10 of those accounts, well, that's two dimes, right? So it's really a cat and mouse game, but once it gets down to anything lower than 100, that's when it's time to take the payout and move on.
Yeah, and I the last thing on this show I want to do is be like, oh, Pace is defending the sports books limiting players. Like, no, that's not what I'm about. It's just when I look at the equation as a problem and take the local lottery corporation out of the discussion, and you're telling me the alternative is everyone is on this super sharp moving lines model where every wager is fixing the juice as action comes in, and you can see some pretty crazy stuff. Obviously that's not the world that I think is what any player really wants, and the market has shown us that in a big way. Like, people love FanDuel for oftentimes their highest hold products. These crazy same game parlays that they make the most money on of anything else is why people want to play there, right? So all the answers together aren't necessarily the easiest thing, but I think you brought up a good example. So you've limited me to 200. Well, if you go out into the public and you're just walking down the street and every single person that walks by you is a sports bettor, we know that on average not everyone's betting $200. In fact, 200 would be viewed as quite a large bettor, even though it is far less than what we would like to get down on one particular event. So there is a reasonable amount that exists out there where you go, okay, this is my lottery book now, where you go, hey, I can still bet 200 there. And John Smith walking by you on the street's going to be like, 200? You bet 200 on a game? That's a lot of money, right? So there is some reasonable amount that's out there, and a lot of these sports books, obviously, Bet365 being just such a good example, where you place one wager, and the second that it's placed, you get that email, your account, and your limits are now at $1. It's like, it's insanity to me that you can't manage your book better to allow for players to be able to wager 3 figures on a game. It's nuts.
Yeah, especially with what some of these places are pulling in, and all of them, to be honest. Like, there's not too many sharps out there. Like, there is, but in terms of the grand scheme of it all, we were talking 99 to 1, right? So yeah, you should be able to book $200, but again, maybe I just gave away the secret sauce. Is like, well, if we do that and this guy has 50 accounts, well, guess what? We still have to deal with this asshole. So, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I to be honest, I don't know. We could go back and forth on this all day long, and I still think there's like question marks. And I'm one of the rare few that actually understands it from both sides of the equation, right? So I get it from a sportsbooks side of things, because man, when I worked at the Lottery Corporation, and I say I'm going to group myself in with the other odds makers and stuff, but we had a lot of squares. So on certain games, we would push certain favorites. The Toronto Maple Leafs, heaven forbid, if they were hot at any time, we could push them and make them extra favorites, because we know everyone that's going to buy their bread and milk are going to put the Maple Leafs in their parlay. But when you do that, you give value to the other side. So Toronto playing the Phoenix Coyotes, well, guess what? The Phoenix Coyotes were paying better at Proline than they were at Pinnacle. So what does that tell you? Well, that tells you that a lot of sharps are going to realize this and go out and have the Phoenix Coyotes in every single one of their parlay. And then when the Phoenix Coyotes would eventually win, because they don't lose every single game, they'd win some, man, the Lottery Corp would take some serious hits. And the way they some of these sharp groups got down on this stuff, like, I would honestly take a 15-minute bathroom break. Everything's good. The liability on every game looks solid, and then I'd come back, and then holy shit, how the fuck did they bet $50,000 on Phoenix in 15 minutes that I was just at the washroom. Like I know how hard it is to get down on this shit. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's. I don't know if there's a perfect answer because again, if everyone turns into Pinnacle, I'm screwed. I got to go find something else to do with my time because I can't beat Pinnacle easily.
You're actually describing something that we've talked about at In Play Live quite a bit about Toronto sports in general. Nothing specific to OLG is exactly what you just said. Toronto has such a remarkable concentration of really some of the best fans in sports from a loyalty standpoint. The betting concentration in Toronto is extremely high per capita. And then you get teams that typically are going to be favorites in a lot of games and crazy volume coming in on them. So separately of being, at OLG, I think that fading Toronto can have value just from the concentration of bettors and how heavily they back their teams. You don't get a lot of people in Toronto betting against the Maple Leafs. And the following for the Blue Jays is insane as well. So yeah, I find that what you just said is actually something that can be exploited to an extent. We do that in live betting quite a bit against some of these really heavy favorites in hockey. And I mean, the Maple Leafs in the regular season have been insane for a good few years, but a really good example is some of those hockey lines that you see on them, minus 300, minus 400 favorites for the Leafs now these days, especially since the legalization. When the regulated sportsbooks landed in Ontario, I saw bigger favorites on the Maple Leafs than I'd ever seen in hockey across the league ever.
Yeah,
pretty wild.
Yeah, I believe that. Like, I don't know if they could really get away with it too much in terms of pushing it these days because people have odd screens, whatever one you're using, Don Best, Spank odds, and if you see an outlier every single time, well, the sharps are going to notice.
Yeah, for sure.
And then they're
it's
coming.
Across the board. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's across the board. Like Toronto's over handicapped across the board to deal with the amount of volume that comes in on them.
I believe it. I believe it. And even, I could see them these days of, charging some extra juice on Toronto, but not giving it to the dog.
Yeah.
Right. So just increasing their line because that's kind of the dirty tricks that they use out here. But
that's the Titan plays strategy.
These goddamn
there
guys.
You go.
I can't believe it.
Pisky, first off, though, I just got to say, I love that you used the Phoenix Coyotes as in your example there, because teams from Arizona are very near and dear to our audience's heart. We absolutely love teams out of Arizona for betting reasons.
Okay.
Yeah. Shout out the Bags. All right.
Well, you guys noticed that when you're a sharp bettor, and I was talking this with my prop guy the other day, because it seems like everything that he's betting is underdogs and unders. Right? Just all the shit that has value is you're usually betting on the junk, the garbage of sports betting. And like I'm used to it at this point. Again, like during that OLG project, we had every under in every single game. So you get used to just cheering for pure garbage. But that's the way it is. That's where the value is, right? So it's kind of a different way of doing things, and I think that's why a lot of people just can't handle sports betting for real, because you end up getting forced to take a lot of this stuff if you're playing the value game, and people don't like that, man. Like the average Joe wants to bet favorites and overs, right? None of this dog and under shit.
Hey, let them have it.
Yeah, that's it. Keep gobbling those up because we're waiting on the other side, 100%.
Exactly. Pisky, we're running out of time here a little bit, but I just wanted to get a sense of we talked a lot about where you've been and what you've done. What are you doing now? What are you doing as time goes on? What can people expect from the Always Betting podcast?
Well, the Always Betting podcast is a little different. We've had different angles. We're in our 4th season now, and you know what? We actually did a weekly episode when we were doing that OLG project. So you can go back and listen to it. Now, advance apologies because we were very new at podcasting, so it probably sounds like shit. But there's probably some fascinating stories that we told that I don't even remember, to be honest, because we were doing it actually every week that we were doing that project. So the podcast nowadays, we just started this past Friday. come back for season 4. And we're having a little bit more fun with it these days. I think there's a lot of podcasts out there that, if you want to learn a lot of information in the sports betting industry, there's podcasts out there for that. Now, we can teach you a thing or two, but we do it in a much more digestible manner. It's myself and the guy that I worked with side by side at the OLG for 13 years. We call him the Godfather. And we like to have fun with it. We incorporate a lot of our day-to-day lives. We like to shit on sportsbooks like we did here today. And this season, for the first time ever, we're actually trying to come to a consensus. So we joined the Circa Million football contest down in Vegas when we were there at Bet Bash. So we have to come up with 5 picks every single week against the spread. And that's what we're doing this season is having a little fun with it. The Godfather is a favorite guy. I'm an all dogs go to heaven guy. And we have to come up with a consensus 5 picks every week. So there's going to be some fireworks. There was just some fireworks in our first episode. So that's what's going on with the podcast. And we're going to mix in different things as well. Maybe have guests on from time to time just to keep that educational component as well. And just to switch it up. You don't want to hear us dummies talk all the time. So there's that. And for myself, I just completed my first year as a full-blown entrepreneur. So my goal now is just to create as many revenue streams as possible for myself. And by doing that, I'm also creating a lot of content and kind of documenting my journey. So that's something if you want to follow along, still trying to figure it out, the whole social media thing. But I am pretty active on there. I do talk to my phone quite often. And it's this new journey, and I left the lottery corporation in 2021 to do this. 2022 was kind of a transition phase in Las Vegas, and now 2023 and 2024, full blown entrepreneur. I dabble in crypto, I dabble in sports betting, I dabble in rental properties. So I'm just doing a lot of different things and hoping that a lot of mud will stick to the wall and. I can create some new additional revenue streams for myself. So it's entertaining and follow along on the journey. All my social handles are at Pisky Positivo, Pisky Positivo. And the only reason why people think, oh, what is this guy, some sort of preacher or something with this positivity shit? It's actually just a personal reminder to not get on social media and bitch and whine like a lot of people do. So I threw Positivo at the end of my name so that I'm like, every time I go there to complain about something, I'm like, oh, no, I can't do that. I'm the positive guy. So that's what it's all about.
Love it. Yeah, no, hey, man, having that positive mindset is extremely important in this line of work.
Oh, my God. Yeah, especially in sports betting and in entrepreneurship. If you come to the table, if you sit down in front of the computer with a poopy diaper, you're in big trouble. You got to be as positive and as upbeat as you can. And so far so good. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I know these things, especially like in sports betting, here today, gone tomorrow. So delicately move forward and hopefully the good times keep rolling.
Hey, you know what? I'm a big fan of the Always Betting podcast, The Godfather. What a character that guy is. That must be a lot of fun recording with him. Great show. Like you said, it is a lot of fun to listen to, and you guys have a great time on there.
Yeah, for sure. The Godfather is like a second dad to me. He's been around myself and my friends and my family for so long. And you know what? He's a hard worker, man. He's dedicated. He shows up every podcast episode full of energy and fire, and it just adds to it. I think it's fantastic, and he helps me a lot with the betting stuff that we do. And I can't say enough good things about him. It's a lot of fun, and we have great chemistry together.
Awesome. Well, it's been great having you on our show here. This was a lot of fun recording with you and chatting with you. I had a great time getting to know you, and maybe we'll have you back sometime. It would be great. Would you love to come back?
I'd be honored to, guys. Honestly, I love what you guys are doing. I jumped into your website before getting on here a little bit. Like, you guys have done a shit ton of work that I can see. And you know what? I'll tell you, whatever marketing strategy you're using is working because my feeds are polluted with in-play live shit. I'm telling you. And you know what? I support it because I got to get better at that myself. You got to scream and yell a lot on social media, and I try to do the best I can, but sometimes you get in your own head and you get overwhelmed with it, but you guys are doing it the right way. And keep pressing and keep going. And it's honestly, it's amazing meeting like-minded individuals that understand what we have to go through as sharp bettors and stuff like that. It's great connecting with guys like you. So I really appreciate you having me on here.
Hey, we were happy to have you. All right. Well, good luck with your entrepreneurship. Looking forward to listening to you and the Godfather fight it out week in, week out on the Always Betting podcast. That'll be great to listen to as you pick your spreads. And maybe we'll have you back on the show again sometime. But for now, that's it. To everybody out there, all the sports bettors listening around the world, Pisky, till next week, keep beating those books. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join In Play Live, use promo code Behind the Lines.